Welcome to Crawlspace. I'm Tim, here today with Lance. Lance, how are you today?
I couldn't be better, Tim. Seriously, could not be better. How are you? That's
are you
my
serious? Because you do say that every episode almost, and I never think you're serious.
No, I'm always serious. Every day is a new opportunity for something wonderful to happen, and this episode is one of those wonderful things.
That is also true. And yes, we are joined by the very interesting fellow and author, Jimmy Lee Shreeve. He wrote a book called Human Sacrifice, a shocking expose of ritual killings worldwide. And we just had a really interesting conversation with Jimmy Lee Shreeve.
That's right. You can get that book, Human Sacrifice, on Amazon. He's also got a website, jimmyleeshreeve.net. And that is Jimmy, LEESHREEVE.net. And this conversation we have with him really just scratches the surface as it goes with the topic here and what he discusses in his book, Human Sacrifice. It's shocking, it's funny at times, it's terrifying at times, but this conversation with Jimmy is quite a wild ride, and we really could have gone on for, I don't know, hours.
Absolutely. So check it out, and thank you very much for listening. Please follow us on social media, Crawlspace Pod on Twitter. We're also on TikTok now at Crawlspace Podcast. And hey, while you're at it, please give us a 5-star review. We'd really appreciate it. We are being joined now by Jimmy Lee Shreeve, author of Human Sacrifice and many other books. How are you today?
Oh, pretty good. Yeah, it's cold here in the UK at the moment, but yeah, it's good. Yeah.
It's unbelievable. I've been in nervous anticipation for this interview because admittedly, I hadn't discovered your work until Human Sacrifice, and that just kind of floated into my orbit at some point about a month ago through Audible, and they were suggesting things that I might like, and this book popped up, and the cover is incredible. So, of course, being just the morbid person that I am from time to time, I clicked on it and started listening, and I immediately texted Tim, and I was like, this is incredible. This is a ridiculous book. So thank you for joining us. You've written under the pseudonym of many different names, probably 4,222 books.
There is different personas, but I think they're all me, really. But different aspects, maybe. Yeah.
Okay, so where to begin here? We want to obviously talk about Human Sacrifice, but your background is pretty damn interesting as well. Can you give a little bit? Right now, your Zoom name is Dr. Snake. And doctor is spelled Doktor.
Oh, yes. Yeah. That's the only real Zoom account I've got. So, a bit about me. I mean, I'll tell you what, let's go back to 12 years old. And I remember, my dad saying, well, what are you going to do for a job, as often happens. So I said, well, I don't want to work. I don't want to work. So my whole life has been about not working, if I can get away with it, because I never had a job. So I did stick to it. And so I used to play in bands, for quite a long time. And then, because Hunter S. Thompson was a big thing with me, and I thought, well, with the bands, you need to get kind of pretty famous to have enough money. Otherwise, you haven't got huge amounts. So I thought, hang on, let's be an author if it worked for Hunter. So I followed in his footsteps. And but I did speak to him, and he was going on, because, I was working for magazines, and so got to know him a bit. And, and so, me, I was rather naive, because, I thought, follow in Hunter. I mean, Hunter, obviously, brilliant and very professional, but, it's a crazy way. And I was really lucky because, I just second magazine, top magazine, a contact, I got in it. And that's luck. By the grace of God go I, really. And, so it kind of built from there. And then I thought, need books then, and I was really lucky with that because a pal of mine said, I know a publisher, we will get you with them. And that's where the Dr. Snake Voodoo spell book. So And the name Dr. Snake I had when I was playing in bands, and Doctor with a K was really because of there's a band called British called the Sisters of Mercy that was seen as goth, but they weren't really. And so their drum machine was Dr. Avalanche, spelled like that. And Snake came from actually a voodoo man I did know from Virginia, Dr. Buzzard, and the man Earl Marlowe, who I used to play in bands with, and he was from Trinidad, and he turned out to be a voodoo man, you see, and so he was really good singer, and that he was very egocentric though, so he was really annoying. And so the voodoo spellbook kind of came out of that, and it was true chronicles of me and him actually. So it's quite humorous in places, and it's almost hallucinogenic in places as well. And and then I thought, oh, hang on, because I was already in national newspapers, Daily Telegraph, The Independent, God knows, Daily Express, all of them. And I thought, hang on, we're going to need me as Jimmy Lee Shreeve with some books that are more journalistic, and I was really lucky again. Random House give me 20 grand or something to write that book, Human Sacrifice. And so it kind of went from there. So I got these two personas that is quite genuinely, a journalist, if you like, but somewhat offbeat, and the Dr. Snake kind of, I don't know what you'd say. Well, Dr. Snake, the gonzo voodoo man, I think, perhaps. Yeah. So roughly, that's it.
I couldn't help but notice you partially dedicated your book Human Sacrifice to your cats. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh yeah, well, I've always loved cats. Yeah, and why would I've done it? Well, because I love cats, and they were all kind of strays that got most the ones that are dedicated to got quite very old and died sadly, but dedicated it to that. Maybe there's another reason too, and that is, hang on, brother and sister beast are a lot more sane than Homo sapiens, bearing in mind Human Sacrifice, so I think it was that, yeah.
And you mentioned a little bit about voodoo. Do you practice voodoo?
Well, yeah, but it's how it came back, because I was with Earl Marlowe playing in bands, and he was rather a voodoo man. He used to sort of have clients around London. So he'd do everything from love work to money, sort of exorcism type stuff, which you could see as a form of psychology amongst people who believe certain things, and then you can kind of heal them. So it does work. So what actually happened was that he went, because he was fairly old, he must have been getting on for 70 when I met him. And, eventually, he got very old and sort of passed away. And so, yeah, I took over his thing, really, and that's sort of what grew, and that's what's going on online. So, hesitate with voodoo. You see, there's the religion of voodoo, and I'm not very keen on any religion. And then there's the sort of kind of what you might call magical side. And that involves, it's the voodoo that he did was more hoodoo, which is kind of doing what some people might call spells to affect change in the everyday world, as opposed to, say, hypnosis, where you change yourself, so your effect on the everyday world kind of changes it. So that's what I do as Dr. Snake, definitely. Yeah.
Is that the same as magic?
Yeah, well, it is. Yeah, essentially that was what Earl Marlowe was about. Hoodoo doesn't have much religion in it, not really. I mean, some do, but so it's magic, basically, and that's really what he was. I'd call it kind of folk magic, but I tend to almost bring in ideas from quantum physics and all that kind of thing as well. But
And how did you get inspired to involve yourself in this?
Well, it was really, you see, when I was a boy, I think, my dad just brought home, I think it was UFO book, one of the, famous UFO books. So from there, I sort of got interested in the paranormal and the occult world. And it doesn't necessarily mean I believe everything, because I'm, very much a rationalist at heart. But so when I met Earl Marlowe and we were playing music and things, I guess I was joining in with him because I knew what he was up to, really, so he realized that. So that's really how I got into it, via him and with my previous knowledge, so I could bring, different things to the table.
And so why did you delve into this topic, the topic of human sacrifice?
Well, the reason I think I must have done, there used to be a magazine, well, they're known as Part Works. You buy the magazine and make a kind of encyclopedia, and the famous one in Britain, Europe, Canada, Australia was called, this one was called The X Factor. This was before the, television thing, and it was all about paranormal and cutting edge science. And so I said to them, I've come across these, incidents that seem a bit wild to me, of human sacrifice still going on today. So the editor said, well, yeah, just, do that one. That's a good one to have in the magazine. And and the reason, and then the book came about, because I was thinking about this. I thought, hang on. Now, in the world today, it's a very diverse world, but people that are kind of on the occult side, magic side, they might be kind of Wiccan witches and doing spells and all that. And then there's chaos magic, which would be, people that are also interested in science and all that, consciousness. And, and I thought about this and I thought, well, look, people doing love spells, monies, but continually doing it. And I thought, well, hang on, the human sacrifice is like the ultimate, believers would have thought that if you could sacrifice a human, then it is ultimate power. So I thought, well, that would shock the hell out of, say, your average Wiccan or witch, that sort of thing, or people into that kind of side of things. And I thought, no, when you get to the root of it, it is going on. And, for example, under Idi Amin in Africa, was that like 60s, 70s, he allegedly had a kind of a shaman called Dr. Draco, who was kind of like, what kind of shaman? Well, maybe the real thing. So it's kind of very similar to the idea of voodoo in Africa. And allegedly, he would have people kidnapped and basically skin them alive very, very, very slowly. And they saw it as, gaining this kind of otherworld or numinous power. And obviously someone like Idi Amin would have wanted any amount of that, and the human, I say alleged because, it's, a lot of these things are hard, in Africa with stories like that may well have been true. You get sort of Christians who use it to propagate their kind of religion. So then you can defame what you might call traditional religious belief, which would be more pagan. So that's why I got into it, was that I thought that, the average person interested in magic is going to think this is unbelievable. But I was really asking the question, what is not human sacrifice really at the root of all this? We know animal sacrifice was, which I'm opposed to,
So if it's not human sacrifice at the root, it's something like trying to run things through fear or something like that. It's like making people do what you want by intimidation or something.
Well, that would be a good one for any kind of tyrant like Idi Amin was. Yeah, I mean, if you could, again, you have to take that into account, because it couldn't be better, could it, if you're a dictator, to just up the ante of fear. But that said, I mean, quite seriously, human sacrifice is still going on even today. And when I wrote the book, so most definitely in India, there was a case of someone, I think it was to do with winning lottery numbers, and someone lured a woman and sacrificed her to invisible entities, gods or spirits or whatever you want to call it. And so it really does go on. But again, you could then add the proviso: are people that do that, basically kind of psychopathic or got extreme mental illness? So again, you've got to weigh it up, I think. But then equally, we don't want to believe that people could be that callous, that evil, do we? We don't.
Well, I guess it could be both still, right? It could be someone commits murder for what they think is human sacrifice or magic, or, in the case of that lottery, it sounds like he actually won something. So he thought he thought the murder.
I don't know. He didn't. You see, that's the big irony of it. And it is belief. Because if you think, belief is one of the most powerful traits of humans in the world, and you think of cults and the Catholic Church. It's predicated. The Catholic Church is predicated on invisible things that you can't prove, and lots of idols, Jesus on the cross, and people their behavior in the world is sort of impacted by that. And some people it might make them better people, and and all that. So I'm not necessarily saying it's wrong, but belief, it's so across the board, isn't it? Absolute levels. There's believers in the UFO thing, and nuts and bolts spacecraft and aliens, and it's kind of endless, the levels of belief that are around. In Indian gurus, for example, or the mass suicides, and I've forgotten, like Heaven's Gate, I think it was, that sort of thing. And you don't basically drink the Kool-Aid that kills you, without belief, do you? Of a better thing coming. And so I think it's part of that. But the real with that human sacrifice book, the biggest case was the one in London, where the torso of a little boy, probably about 7 years old, was found in the River Thames. And it was just a torso; all the limbs had been cut off, and the police, thought, well, this is just some crazed psychopathic murderer. But then they sort of started to have suspicions, and eventually, they got kind of expert advice and they started to think, hang on, this is some form of human sacrifice. Not necessarily kind of voodoo, but they felt it was African. And and they came to believe it was human sacrifice. And the reason that story didn't go like mega everywhere was because of 9/11 happened around that time, and so obviously the news was swamped by that. But and I went to Scotland Yard, or Metropolitan Police, and met head of homicide and the main detective on the case. The main detective, by the by, kind of looked like Columbo and wore the same sort of coat, He was Irish, but I thought, oh, you're Columbo, and and he did, he said, it was, and he'd been to Africa, he was adamant, and I think he still is, to solve that case, because of this little black boy, was killed in a most horrific manner. So the detective went to Africa, and he literally had to have armed guards with submachine guns and things, because very dangerous where he went. And the upshot, in their opinion, was it really was human sacrifice, possibly to gain some form of power by taking a life like that.
And this is the person was Adam, right? This is Adam's story from the book?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The Adam story. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's okay. And what was it about the murder itself that you said that it was it looked African and they went to Africa? Where was the tie there? Like how did they look at that? How did the inspector look at that and say, I see the connection here?
They found sort of ritual items, I think on the bank, it's called the embankment of the Thames, and and candles and various sort of artifacts that were probably handmade. And then they thought, well, this is weird. So they got some, probably academics in that knew about, traditional African religion, and they thought it might have been Yoruba kind of, but I don't think it was, but that was the first part of it. So that started to make them think, because, they thought like satanic killings probably. And, obvious, and really with so-called satanic killings, they're not really, they're kind of mad people, like they're not mentally well and just become obsessed with the idea of Satan and things. Yeah.
How is this different from, or how did they make the distinction between this being maybe a random murder from, like maybe a serial killer, or just something that could have been a family member? How did they make the distinction between that and, you said, Yoruba?
Yeah, well, that I think they eventually, wrote off the Yoruba tribe completely. They made the distinction. For a start, they were unable to identify the boy because just a torso, and they used all sorts of forensics, which traced any food in the system to Africa. So they knew he'd come out of Africa. And because of ritual items, and a few things came in, I think, that sort of suggested human trafficking, most definitely, because that does go on. And so that got them thinking, well, so if this little boy was human trafficked, normally it's for either sort of modern day slavery, where people have kind of domestic servants, if you like, and don't really pay them. And that goes on. And obviously there's a sex trade, really evil side of it. But they got this boy, so he's killed. And yeah, one of the academics, I believe, said, well, the whole thing very much looks like human sacrifice. And so again, in Africa, the detective went around the markets there, which is what we'd see as illegal meat, say like lions, protected species was there, sort of illegal stuff like that. But the impression this detective got was that, if you wanted it, you could get human body parts, which you can use in your magic, which gives it power. And so it was all coming together, and you can, in those markets, ask the right questions, produce the money, and you can get human body parts like an ear or a bit of an ear, and put that in a kind of, for want of a better term, magic spell that will get you what you want in life. So, I mean, it seems, it does go on. I mean, that's the strange thing. It really does.
Yeah, I think I'm struggling with differentiating like the mental illness versus doing it and believing that it's magic, or you're doing it for a sacrifice and doing it. And then it's like, what's the difference between it at that point if you actually commit the murder? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, that's true. Well, I think then we come to, let's say, we found someone who'd done that, and we're able to get them in custody, and we've got psychologists there, and they say, well, essentially the person is sane, but they believe this. So then we come back to belief and the power of belief. And remember the ancient civilizations, famously like Aztecs and all that, blood running down those sort of types of pyramid they had there, is they sacrificed huge amounts of people to the gods to kind of keep the country stable and crops to keep the food supply up. And that's historically correct. In Britain, the Celtic Druids, which were a caste actually of you'd call like very upper class, and they were like lawyers and things like that, and some were priests, of the Celtic pagan religion, and they sacrificed people. Anglo-Saxons, while they were still pagan up to roughly the 7th century, Vikings too, they sacrificed people, but in a way that was more like criminals, people that sort of affected the community in a bad way, and enemies, and they would be sacrificed. But also the Vikings and the sort of Germanic tribes, if you like, it's on record, from one of the Roman explorers that so there was a ship burial, where you burn it, and you got the kind of chieftain, dead in there with all his belongings, gold and all sorts of stuff. And they were heathen, pagan, so it was like Odin, Thor, Freya, and all of that. And so from the Roman explorer, what's on record is that so there's a large group of people for this kind of funeral, and warriors, also slaves, because like Vikings had slaves, Saxons, people they captured, that was society, and so they're all standing there. And then one of the warriors selects the most, women or young women that he thinks are most attractive, and they were probably the servants of the chieftain. So they go in the ship with these slaves, and they have sex with them, and then they kill them, and sacrifice them. The blood, to the gods, which might have been Odin, Thor, or any of those kind of gods. And that was the norm. And when you think about, say, 5th, 6th, 7th century, maybe 8th, that's not that long ago. And that's sort of, talking about Britain and Europe and so then you can ally that to America because of the settlers, so it's like it's not that long ago, if that's your ancestral heritage, that was going on. And and they did that, so they'd sacrifice, they did, had sex with the girl, that, and then sacrificed her, and that was for the chieftain. And they knew they had to die, these slave girls, because they were going to be to serve this chieftain in the kind of the afterlife. And so that was the religion and the belief and the way that society was structured.
Okay, so on that topic of belief and that mindset of belief, what's the difference between someone who practices Satanism and somebody like a satanic who sacrifices to honor the Dark Lord? Like, because you make that distinction as well, that you can
definitely, because Satanism, if we think of Anton LaVey, was basically atheism, certain amount of Ayn Rand, Atlas Shrugged, kind of libertarian, if you like. So essentially Anton LaVey was that, but with, obviously came to prominence going to a Halloween shop and putting on silly costumes to almost make fun of the whole thing. So he's on Johnny Carson, essentially everyone's, oh my God, it's shocking. But really he's making fun of belief, because he's highly intelligent. I mean, scholarly sort of chap, really, really intelligent. His books he had were phenomenal library, So, the Satanists that we might know today, I think the head of, say, the Church of Satan is Peter Gilmore, who looks like a friendly uncle or Santa Claus, basically, his grey beard and grey hair and everything. And, again, highly intelligent. They have kind of seminars with the Skeptics Society. So it's obvious where they like a bit of drama, sort of theatrical stuff, but they're essentially very rationalists. And then, of course, you get believers in the Satan and all the rest of it, hierarchy of hell. And some of them are intelligent enough and, presumably wouldn't sacrifice anyone. But then I think, yes, exactly what you said. I made the distinction that then you get, literally crazy heads who are just basically mentally ill, probably drugs involved, be they medical or street drugs. And, and they become obsessed with the idea of Satan, but it's a bit cartoon-like, And so it's almost, so again, it's an obsession. And of course, they hear voices. And if Satan tells them you've got to kill someone, they're going to do it because, people hear voices. But on that note, hearing voices, again, it's difficult because you could say schizophrenia and all of that sort of thing, hearing voices. But I always say, yeah, but don't you hear voices in your head? Because I do. We all hear voices in our head, don't we? We've got our own voice, like we're trying to think rationally about something. But you can hear your friend, can't you? If I said to you, think of your best friend and what you were talking to him or her about, the other day, and you'd hear it in your head. So it's like, I'd love to know to what degree it is, or are these people just simply not able to deal with what is normal, hearing voices, because I could make Satan speak to me now in my head if I want, or some anything. I can make Donald Trump. I can bring his voice to mind. We can all do that. Do you see what I mean? How difficult the whole area is. But mentally sick people, I suppose in a sense they've lost control. But they're the killers. They're the ones who do those so-called satanic killings. They're not. You'd have to say that they're not fit to be in society because basically they're going to go off the head and kill people.
Well, I guess the same could be said for people who have been arrested because they've heard voices of God and Jesus telling them that they needed to kill people as well, or a voice of a dog, or the voice of fill in the blank. It does kind of go back to mental illness.
Yeah, well, again, you could be a little bit contentious and sort of say, especially you're talking America, is like, for example, in the American South, the Pentecostal religion, mostly it's, everyone, probably keeps them, being fairly good people and all that. But basically they speak in tongues in the churches, they hear the voice of God and Jesus. They literally, hear, don't they? So they're hearing voices. They'll say, God spoke to me, it came through, and that I should do this. Usually it's not killing people, but on rare occasions it is. Yeah.
And we'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
Thanks to our sponsors, and now we're back to the program.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about people who are professionals in this. Professional people who sacrifice. You had a very humorous bit where you toyed around with becoming a hitman. You thought that might be a good profession. Some quick money. Tell us about that and how that is sort of translates into being a professional human sacrificer.
Human sacrificer. Well, of course, that Dr. Draco I mentioned that was allegedly under Idi Amin. That's why I came up with professional human sacrificer, because he was essentially there to bring more power to Idi Amin, more fear, and and so it's essentially that was his business, if you like, and which is kind of crazy, and and so it meant like having it is allegedly the story goes that he had a British soldier in Africa kidnapped, and it's something, and the ritual was something like 10,000 cuts, and this Dr. Draco, he was obviously very professional because he'd have scalpels, and obviously the soldier was restrained, still alive, conscious. And these cuts were just put all over his body slowly. So it was excruciating agony, and it would kill him in the end, but the death was very, very slow. And his utter fear and terror was what I think the idea was, that it would feed a god or something, some otherworld entity, that would then bestow its powers mostly on Idi Amin.
You also skated past the topic of you wanting to be a hitman.
Oh yes, I was going to get to that. Well, because then you could say, yeah, because you're in a job, paycheck to paycheck, it's miserable. So at what point, it's like, yeah, if you could be, I mean, this is the crazy thing about the world, isn't it? That you could literally think, well, actually, the kind of people you're going to hit, probably in the criminal world, would it really matter? And then you become in a sense, a professional human sacrificer, but you don't do the magic bit. So any hit men or women listening, you could say to them, maybe you're missing a trick. Maybe you need to get the magic bit in, because then you'll get all the, power that is on the table. But yeah,
we do have a large demographic of hit men and women who listen to the show, so solid advice.
Oh, good. Yeah, well, that's right. Well, actually, on that note, how about this one then? Yeah, because that's the hitman. Yeah, you could decide to do it. And how do you morally? I think I might have said in the book. You'd have to do. First hit, you'd probably be sick to the core, literally, and in a terrible state. Second, third, then you start getting used to it, and it really is just your job, and things, which you hear from like special forces people. That's kind of how it works. But how about this? So Joe Rogan, we know Joe Rogan, don't we? And so how about this? So how would you like to be more popular than Joe Rogan?
Well, actually, on the Hitman charts, we're number 1 and he's number 2. So we outrank him on that at least. But that is the only chart that we outrank him on.
Yeah, brilliant. But,
so it would be great.
But just think, so like we're, I say to you, well, let's just pop down this hotel bar. It's a really nice bar. You could get to be as big as Joe Rogan. It's like, it can be done. You'd say, oh, what magic? Yeah, base sort of magic, yeah. So, okay, we'd be up for that. That sounds fine. And then obviously it'd be like, well, yeah, you've got to find, someone to sacrifice, a human. And then, so I'd be the devil's advocate, of course. And then be like, well, you could find someone that's, no one really cares about, find them on the street and, do that. And, so then we get into territory of, if you believe it, what would you do? You see what I mean? Because you'd say, oh, you're crazy. That's just like immoral. You're immoral. And I'd say, well, what do you expect from Satan? And, but if you were a believer, you believed in sort of traditional religion that's kind of pagan and stuff, and you'd heard whispers and rumors, and I'm saying, well, yeah, it stands to make you beat Joe Rogan.
Well, okay, blink once if this is just a hypothetical scenario, and twice if this is real, because I'm on the fence here, and I'm pretty close to leaning towards the Joe Rogan popularity.
I thought you would be. Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
sounds like a pretty good deal.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but in a way, it does illustrate, doesn't it? Don't you think? That sort of temptation. You have to be a believer because naturally, even if you were tempted, which I don't think you would be, you'd think, nah. I mean, that's not going to work, is it?
I can't help but think about the plot to Rosemary's Baby, the book and the movie. How it's the husband gives up basically his wife to Satan so she can have the child, so his acting career can take off. And numerous people die in the process, and she does give birth to this. Spoiler to anyone who hasn't seen the movie or read the book. She does give birth to Satan's son. Yeah.
But that's brilliant. I mean, I think that sums it up. Yeah, I think it really does. Yeah. I think it must do, though, mustn't it? You've got to believe, because of Rosemary's Baby, you say, Satan is nonsense. There's no, invisible entity or whatever called, Satan. It's just, it wouldn't happen. But, if you think you believe in all those things, then the temptation could be enormous, couldn't it? I mean, it may be we're understanding, because in the end, you've got to ask yourself, how could that happen? How could anyone go along with it?
Pride, right? Ego?
Mm, mm. Yeah, become sort of, sort of very prominent, and yeah, definitely, I think there is, I mean, there is really strange stuff, because in America you've got Palo Mayombe, which is another one of the kind of, African related religions. And, it's in South America too. And there have been weird stuff to do with that. Yeah, it's spiritist beliefs. So believers tend to have pots, a bit like cauldrons, if you like. And it's very much ancestral spirits, of the dead kind of worship and dealing with the dead. And they keep bones in the cauldron, and then they talk to it and do kind of incantations, get kind of information psychically, that kind of thing, and also spells, I suppose, to get what you want in life. And it's a religion as well, so I'm certainly not defaming it. I mean, it's just that there have been police have picked people up raiding graveyards to get bones, and so a lot of people, I think, around New Jersey and places like that. So all the so you can imagine families say, oh my God, grave, or the tomb thing, bones, what's going on? That was like my grandfather. So, there's outcry. And yeah, this was going on, where graveyards were being raided, and they were doing, their ritual stuff with these bones, and there have been sort of, the odd, murder again, under that sort of spiritist religion. So, it's an odd thing, because if you're an absolute rationalist, you could actually say to yourself that it's the age of reason was what, like a few hundred years ago. So it's not very long ago. So maybe the world, slowly needs to sort of come of age and not have religious or magical beliefs, that is detrimental, and that the new world would be based on rationalism, and all that kind of thing doesn't happen. So religion, I mean, actually, anyone, listening who knows about, like conspiracy stuff, World Economic Forum seems to be shaped under Karl Schwab, seems to be sort of got a plan to shape, a new world order. And, I've looked quite closely at them, and I'm not saying I agree with them, but you can see, my impression is that they're very rationalist, technocratic, and the Google are involved as well. I forgot, the two main chaps, I've forgotten their names, so there's this kind of atheism and rationalism. It's almost like our world was, long ago, we were equally intelligent as we are now, but, obviously we didn't have information. So we didn't, about the sun, setting, all the things. So we made up mythologies. And I do wonder if, like, World Economic Forum, Karl Schwab, and all those people, Google, and all these people, sort of have gone the other way to, where, the human was flawed, and that we need new humans that are utterly rational, kind of like machines, I suppose, algorithms. So you could say it's taking it further, but so that kind of comes into it. It looks to me like there is certainly, International Monetary Fund, all those kind of really big people. It's almost like they want to put, we're talking about human sacrifice. That would be an extreme example of what they might call primitive belief that leads to homicide. And, how crazy can you get? But humans are so flawed that we need everyone to, the age of reason to come in, but not leave it naturally. And that they're almost trying to push it forward, So I think nowadays we've got this kind of dichotomy of, the Google people, they're, I think, yeah, they're atheist and rationalist, but they do have an odd thing with that Burning Man thing in the desert in, I don't know whether it's Nevada or somewhere like that. And, so they got a slightly odd thing, but Yeah. So now I think we've got a world which is, there's a clash of, between new rationalists typified by the technocracy and the old world, which is not just human sacrifice and, because I mentioned Palo Mayumbe and different religions like that, which some would call spiritism. But then you've got the Catholic Church, you've got all the religion, and this, you lump them all in together. They've got belief in the invisible. The new rationalists don't. It's algorithms.
Are you saying that they have caused us to sacrifice our own souls for their algorithms?
Well, yeah. It depends. Well, of course. Then again, I would say to you, soul. Now, what is it? Can you make it tangible?
I've tried to sacrifice Lance's soul to be a popular podcaster, and I'm pretty sure that he's tried to sacrifice mine to be a popular podcaster. Yeah. And so I think what's happened is it's evened itself out, and the show's gone nowhere.
Yeah, one of you's got to give up your soul, but yeah.
Right, we're pulling in both directions. It's
that's right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, but you're right. If we say soul is something about what makes us human, obviously religious belief would say soul exists and it lives on after death, and reincarnation people, it kind of comes back. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right, though. I think the technocrats, from Zuckerberg, Google, obviously Gates, the World Economic Forum, because they're so powerful. And I do think that they essentially want to steal yours. Well, they don't believe there's a soul anyway, I think. And to them, life after death would be getting you upload, the mind stuff that makes you uploaded to the cloud and you can live on. But yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, the sacrifice of the soul is what's happening.
My goodness. I really wanted to talk about the things that were found in Noriega's, found in his house, but I don't know how to make a smooth transition to that from here.
Well, I don't worry about smooth transitions, just bang. Yeah, well, actually, okay. Noriega. Yeah, well, that's right. People like him, or him in particular. Yeah, he'd got, we'll call them voodoo people, but there'd be different names for them, but it's the same sort of thing, African belief. There's sort of cannibal and different names, but it's kind of voodoo religion-ish, it's along those lines. And so like a lot of people like him, South America, and also the drug cartels, but sticking with Noriega, so he hired shamans, or whatever you want to call them, magicians or whatever. And so they're saying, oh yeah, well we'll we've got these roots, we've got these herbs, we're going to sacrifice this animal, and that will bring you more power, and it will keep your enemies at bay. So they're professional shamans working for despots, and definitely they found all sorts of items, blood and whatnot. It was kept in freezers and things like that, and the most macabre items. And partly, of course, it's psychological. It's Sun Tzu, art of war. Destabilize your enemy, make them fearful. So if they think you've got these kind of priests or shamans working for you, then that works. But I would think Noriega also, well, he might either have believed in it and thought this will work, or he might have just kind of thought, well, if it does, that's great, but the main thing is the fear, so yeah, it's very common. And drug cartels, they typically have, magic people, shamans doing, same sort of thing, roots, herbs, sacrificial animals, blood in, freezers, all of that sort of thing. Probably, enemies, they probably, when they've shot someone in the drug wars, I think they'll just remove parts like an ear and things like that. No, so it's partly the psyops, I would say, but in the crime, drug cartels, it's almost a given. If we were going to go and meet some drug cartel, I think you saw it in Breaking Bad, didn't you? A bit. Did you see Breaking Bad?
Yeah.
Remember that? It was good, wasn't it? And you remember that there was, oh God, Saint Death, Saint Death, the really, well, cool but terrifying guys with the really sharp boots on, you know.
Yeah, the twins. Yeah, they did.
The twins, yeah, absolutely, yeah. I forgot.
They had that whole what religion was that? What were they practicing?
Saint Death, Santa Murta. So they kind of worship, almost like so Saint Death, death itself, with the scythe, the Grim Reaper. It's almost like it is religious, it's almost it's very involved with cartels, and because again you've got fear with Saint Death, haven't you? You can't beat that, can you? But it's, in a sense, the average person into that isn't, in the cartels. You could. I think you could say it's not different to the Pentecostal religion in a sense. Different icons and all that, but people would, have things they worship. Like something around their neck, and you'd see them sort of like almost doing a silent prayer to Saint Death. And so it's another almost cultish religion, but used by like the twins, you're just going to think, oh my God.
I was particularly interested in, was it the picture of Reagan that they found in Noriega's place that had wax?
That's right. Yeah, of course. Yeah, I forgot. Yeah. Naturally you do that. Wax, make up a sort of like possibly a kind of doll type, like a bit like a voodoo doll. And put the photos in these things. So you're hexing, you're hexing the American forces, Reagan. Yeah, so naturally, it was like, we got to hex them. So it was like a voodoo war, really. Yeah, on his side. What I really wanted to find was whether any American special forces, PSYOP, CIA were using the same thing to try and frighten them. I bet they were. See, I couldn't really find that, but I bet they do. They'll use it against them. So so you've got cartels and criminals, as well as despots, tyrants, using this kind of magic, partly as psyops, but also the other side does too, because in America, oh God, I think it was in Florida, some police guy down there, and so they're trained, because, like, say back in the 70s, it freaked them out, because America's more, generally more religious than Britain. Britain is secular as hell now, no one believes anything really, but America's in the South especially, still got that religiousness. So if you become a police officer and you raid somewhere, like say Latino place, maybe they're drug dealers, you raid it, and what was happening was they were shocked because there was sort of like artifacts. So you could say like weird looking dolls, again with photographs in them, very macabre vials of blood, probably chickens about, which was used for sacrifice. So you're a cop and you burst in there and it's drug dealers, guns at the ready. It's like, oh my God, what's going on? It's Satan. And they were freaking out because they thought this is satanic, because, inevitably you're going to get police officers that come from, religious, families, much more so in America, because it's not as secular, certainly in the South. So then then there'd be a certain amount of prejudice because they think they're Satanists and more likely to pull the trigger on them, for maybe the wrong reasons. So the American police gradually had people brought in to train young recruits, police officers in the various traditional religions, from Santeria, which is kind of similar to the Voodoo or voodoo type religion, Palo Mayumbe. So they weren't going to be freaked out, and not hopefully not going to shoot someone because they think it's Satan, and it shocked the hell out of them. So that, of course, we have to say that most of these people into religions like Santeria, Palo Mayumbe, Voodoo are just everyday people with a, religious belief system, which is, and as you said about, that people hear the voice of God and kill someone. So there's no sort of singling out a religion as being particularly evil. There's always going to be those kind of crazy people in it that hear the voice and go and do it. So yeah, police in, America, have been sort of trained, so they're ready for the, the varied religious beliefs going on, some of which, is kind of would seem outlandish or satanic if, you're brought up with God and Satan, and, which is much more common in America than, I don't think there's, the religion is quite limited. In Britain, the churches, on a Sunday, you don't, there's no queues. You might see 3 cars, it's like, whereas in the American South on a Sunday, think, oh my God, I'm stuck in a line, So America is actually more, in my opinion, anyways, is more religious, not so much, like New York and, certain places, but, there's far more religion, I think, than here. Britain has just gone very secular, as a by the by.
I have a really weird hypothetical, right? Okay, I'm trying to sort of figure this all out in my head, and I do still struggle with it, because it's like, okay, so if I sacrificed a chicken to survive the winter, and then, we survived the winter. And then my neighbor prayed to their God that they were going to survive the winter. And we did survive the winter. And so we both believe we're right. We both believe what we did caused us to survive the winter. What is the difference, I guess?
Well, I suppose, I guess I could say to you two, couldn't I? I could say, or I could say, give you, I'd say to you, let's say, something you want that is the equivalent of that, like sort of, an extra couple of grand a month coming in individually. And I say to you, here's some roots and herbs and everything. And, in a mojo bag or a sigil symbol thing or something like that. And so when the money starts, coming in, then, it's going to be correlation, not necessarily causation. So if you were more religious minded, you'd see it as causation. That what I told you to make, to your lucky charm, to bring, you extra couple of grand a month more, and it happens to one of you, if you were more religious minded or magic minded, you'd then, see it as a cause, whereas actually it might simply have been that, so and so deal somewhere paid, or your cryptocurrency is, sort of increased your funds. But you will do the, it'll be correlation. So that's very much a part. You see it everywhere, don't you? Especially in religion and magic, is that it's always seen as the cause. Some bad karma or something that's impacted me, and so when you apply the causation, then you're stuck with it. You're never gonna change. You're always gonna. It's like not walking under a ladder. Get bad luck, and you walk under. Oh my God, never do that again because I had bad luck going on, and so that's basically the sort of superstitious kind of belief system which the world has had. And that's where, of course, we can bring in the World Economic Forum, Google, all those people, the technocrats who say, no, computers will, show, the sort of that rationality is the only way to go. So again, we meet that sort of clash of cultures, which I think is going on. Well, it's not cultures even, but clashes between the old world and the new. And the new might not be that great anyway.
Well, okay, yeah, that's interesting because in Tim's example, I think I misunderstood it. I was thinking
Mhm.
maybe he's killing a chicken to survive the winter by providing
Yeah.
food for himself.
Mhm.
But I guess in a sense, like you're killing the chicken to honor some sort of god that'll help you get through the winter.
It's done.
And then you said something that was interesting, sort of in relation as well, where it's like the old way of thinking and the new way of thinking, and along the way, we've established a series and sort of checks and balances, like a series of laws. It's illegal to murder somebody, no matter why you're murdering them. And back in the day, they would hoist somebody up on a pyramid and sacrifice them so that their crops would grow. And at some point they realized, oh, we don't need to do that because it's called seasons and our crops are going to grow. Like it's the way the planets are moving around. It's the way the earth goes around the sun. They figured that out. So it's the evolution of that, old into the new. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts as to where that's going now. Like, how are we going to look back on this time and say, the equivalent of, wow, back then we used to sacrifice human beings to the sun because we thought that there was something controlling the sun and controlling our crops and controlling our life. Is that kind of what you're getting at with the Googles and the Facebooks and the World Economic Forum?
Yeah, definitely, because the chicken it was a really good one, because then you sacrifice the chicken to a given god, invisible entity, and it bestows, good crops, and so or in Europe, I guess, there was this thing with the agriculture of John Barleycorn. John Barleycorn must die, and at the end of when you've harvested the crops, you keep some and make a doll, a John Barleycorn doll, who is kind of sacrificed, but that was symbolic. And before that, they literally sacrificed a human, so to the gods to bestow it. So that went. And then you said about how will we look back on now, didn't you? I don't know what you meant by now, whether...
I don't know. I didn't know if there was something that you can point to that we currently do that might be looked at in the future. Where we would say, oh, I can't believe that we opened up an encyclopedia to look up an answer for something when we, when we had this God Google.
Yeah, that's a good. I thought that's one. It's a good one, isn't it? I think actually might even whatever we might define as soul, they may look back and think the polarity went too extreme in the rational, almost extreme, harsh rationalism, and even medicine is like that. It's one size fits all. And, so I think they'd look back and think that you came out of this kind of superstitious age, which was just going way, way back to, like the Bronze Age and before. And I think, what I think will happen is we'll probably look back and see the extreme levels of everything is like artificial intelligence, algorithms, and the sort of side that was religion or whatever you want to call it, or magical belief, like the belief in other worlds, which I know fits with quantum physics, but, we just did that. We know most of us have got, very creative, imaginative side that, we're walking through a nice park and the trees and we start to see the shapes and that gets our imagination going. We have pictures in our minds of all sorts of things. And I think when people look back in the future, they'll look back and say, well, the metaverse and all that, they basically gave that to people as virtual reality. So people may, as time goes on, be living in smart cities and all they've got is the virtual reality whereas you can do it with your own mind. And I think they'll look back and say, technology became God. So religion never really went away. What happened is that the technology became the God, AI became the God. And so you couldn't have your imaginative fancies, if you like. It was all there for you with virtual reality, which was all constructed to control populaces and things, and that the soul, literally, they'll say, was taken away. Even if they don't necessarily believe in the soul, they'll say that, the idea of the soul, which it's hard to say what it is, but they'll say that was gone. Our sort of visions that we have, the visionary nature of us, is very powerful. It leads to ideas, and I think they'll see it as that what became so harsh, that every little bit was very, controlled, no privacy. So people are almost expressing themselves like people are looking at them because they are, so absolutely no privacy and no spark of imagination or, nothing like that. And I look back and might say that this time that we're living in now was in fact religion under a new guise. It was the god of artificial intelligence, AI, everything controlled. So it was a harsh god of order with no room for chaos, which leads to new things. And it was a stultified world that in fact was, almost the death knell of the human race, where it was narrowed down to nothing. I think, and it's a religion. It is actually religion under another guise. And I think it is, because you see this thing of the, science, trust science, but they're coming out, a lot of them are coming out with things that I think it's got politicized. So actually often it's not very true, but they're coming, to find the science, you've got to find the scientists who aren't funded by government. So I think they'll see that it was a new religion, from, Bill Gates, John the Baptist, Mark Zuckerberg, sort of on the road to Damascus, St. Paul, so who Jesus, maybe Greta Thunberg, or something, female Jesus, I don't know, but I think they'll look back and say religion crept in again, and the madness of delusion took off and went crazy, and the human race got narrowed down to nearly its demise, and in the future, let's hope as a kind of freedom, and the chaos is allowed, because chaos is the creator. It's might well have been what the Big Bang was, that we might have been created out of chaos. So something like that, anyway.
What a fantastic way to wrap it up. I can't ask any more questions, because that was a fantastic way to wrap it up.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's very kind of you. Thank you. Yeah.
This has been a great conversation. Thank you so much, Jimmy, for joining us here today.
Pleasure. Mm.
Where can our listeners get your books?
Well, of course, Amazon. They really, it's mainly Amazon. Yeah, it's really Jimmy Lee Shreeve or Dr. Snake, spelt with a K, Doktor, Dr. Snake, Jimmy Lee Shreeve. And then you see the two sides of the 21st century schizoid man, two people at once. Yeah.
Fantastic. And we should have you back on to talk about other things. You have over 17,000 books that we can reference for topics, and we really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed talking to you. Yeah, so absolutely great. Yeah, brilliant. All right, I'll see you later.
Thanks a lot.